Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Discover Your Spirit on Lilydale Radio. And I am your host, Brenda Reading. I am a registered medium here in Lilydale, and I like to not only talk about spiritual topics and do little mini messages for you all, but every so often there is a special guest that I like to bring onto my show. And I find that usually they are extremely bright and have so much to offer. And one of those people is my friend. Her name is Lin Hunter. Welcome, Lin, to my show tonight.
Thank you, Brenda. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Lin. So I'm going to read Lin's bio because it is so extensive and it's just so interesting. So Lin has studied psychic development, mediumship, trance, and healing in the US and the UK. She's the founder and director of the School for Psychic Studies in Western Massachusetts, where she combines her background as an award-winning corporate trainer with her lifelong interest in the supernatural to create and teach comprehensive classes in a variety of spiritual and metaphysical topics. I find this piece to be extremely interesting, Lin. In 1990, her precognitive vision of a homicide scene drew Lin to explore the field of psychic investigation. In 2010, she became certified in forensic psychic investigation. She has also earned certificates in advanced level remote viewing and forensic composite art. Linda has helped law enforcement agencies, organizations, and families by providing sketches and key pieces of information that have been instrumental in pinpointing locations of interest and confirming suspects in numerous criminal investigations and missing person cases. In 2017, Lin was invited to develop and teach the popular Psychic Skills Certification Program for the ARE of New York, Edgar Cayce Center, New York City, which I have taken. It is a wonderful year-long program, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes here. Right, Lin?
Right.
And the program continues to be offered annually. So, Lin, one of the reasons that it occurred to me to have you on the show this week is we're not going to say names because, things are going on in the country, but there's always missing persons and there's always things that happen. I find it fascinating that you have worked with law enforcement during your tenure doing this type of work. So let's just go back a little bit first. When did you first realize that you had psychic or mediumistic spiritual gifts?
Oh, I think I've always been interested in these things since I was a child. I had, cards and dowsing rods when I was probably 8 to 10 years old. So I've always had an interest and I've always been drawn to things metaphysical. But it was really when I was 16, I think I first created my own deck of tarot cards, copying the Marseille deck. And started working with those and found that, the readings were pretty profound. And so it scared me a little bit, and I backed off for several years after that. And, I think if you're meant to do this type of work, you can't just put it aside and forget about it because spirit will always come knocking at your door. A few years later, of course, I was drawn to it again. And life happens, but it really, when it was that I saw the young woman and I had my first psychic vision of a homicide, that I really went into it full force because I felt like, this was something that maybe I could be of help with.
That is fantastic. And I think on a spiritual note, it's when we use our gifts and talents for good, I feel like we're given more. We're given more responsibility and we're given more gifts. And it's almost like spirit knows that they have helpers here, right? Trying to help people.
Right.
So that's interesting. So what in your work with the law enforcement agencies, what is the hardest part working with them?
Well, I think most law enforcement that I've worked with, um, they're hesitant to work with psychics. They don't really believe in psychic, even though they themselves are psychic. You know, when they have a gut feeling,
Mm-hmm.
that's a psychic feeling. But I think the word psychic just creates a barrier between, law enforcement and someone who's trying to be of help with intuitive or psychic information. And I think that, the most important thing to remember about it is to, make sure that you are at a certain level of accuracy before you even try to work with law enforcement, because so much goes into following up on every lead they get. You don't want to give false information and mislead people. But I think that the most difficult part of it is convincing them that, you're really trying to help and you're not just in it for money. That's the first thing I think I get all the time is how much are you charging these people? And really, if I do help in a case, I do it pro bono. I don't charge anything. And so, once we get that cleared up, then they're usually a little more open to listening to what you have to say.
Oh, it just sounds fascinating to me. So, I know that I've asked you to come teach for Lilydale this summer. And some of the things you're going to be teaching Monday, July 13th, and Tuesday, the 14th, you'll be teaching Intro to Remote Viewing. Talk a little bit about remote viewing for our listeners. Okay, Lynn?
Okay, I got drawn into remote viewing from some people that I was working with in psychic investigation who were using remote viewing, and became a member of the International Remote Viewing Association, um, and started to go to conventions to learn more about it and practice what I had learned so far. And so remote viewing is it's really different from what most people think of it. Most people think it's traveling clairvoyance, which would be something that you're seeing in your mind's eye, or astral travel, where you're out of body and you're going to another location. But remote viewing, the structured protocol that was used by the military, really is a written format. It's a really very structured written protocol, and it involves training your mind, um, mostly quieting down the left hemisphere where we get all of our logical, practical type information, quieting down the left hemisphere and allowing the right hemisphere, where our psychic ability lies, to open up so that we can get accurate information to come through. So there's a written protocol that you can use to actually train your mind to do that.
I remember during one of our exercises during your year-long program that I took from you, you had us write with the other hand, right? So that we weren't using our normal side of the brain so that we could quiet the mind. I remember that. That was very interesting. Um, so in the remote viewing, as I recall, when I took the class from you, there were like coordinates, right? It's like we were given
Right,
coordinates. We weren't given descriptions of anything, just
right.
numbers.
So usually the person who is giving the assignment, called the tasker, will create a set of numbers, alphanumeric sequence of some sort. Um, Most people use to create a focus point for you. It's like using latitude and longitude, for example. But in the beginning, I think remote viewing, they really did start using latitude and longitude as a coordinates. However, people began to be so familiar with where those things were in which part of the world that they decided to just switch it up and use random numbers and letters.
Oh,
And so it's really a way for the viewer to focus in on a specific location, um, so that they can begin to get information coming through.
And you will be teaching Intro to Remote Viewing July 13th and 14th in Lilydale. So also, you will be teaching for us on Wednesday a class on divination tools. Why don't you talk a little bit about what is divination and what type of tools you will be talking about?
Well, divination is just that. It's using some type of a tool to jumpstart psychic information. And a lot of people feel comfortable with tools such as tarot cards or angel cards or I Ching. You know, there are a lot of different ways that you can do it. And what that does, it just opens up, it gives you something to focus on so that you can allow intuitive information to come through. Either pictures on tarot or angel cards, whatever. Something else to focus on, and that way you can open up the right hemisphere and information will come through.
Will you be doing anything with pendulums during that class?
No.
Okay, I just wondered because I know we used pendulums when we were doing psychic investigation. We were using pendulums. I've taken a lot of classes from Lynn. Anyways, so yes, so that'll be fun. And then Thursday and Friday, you will be teaching full days of psychic investigation, which has a
Right.
broad scope. So why don't you? I know I'm just picking your brain here for everybody, but you offer so much, and I want them to get a feel for what it is they'll be taking in addition to the bio and the, description
Mhm.
and the catalog and all that. So go ahead.
Well, when you're involved with psychic investigation, there's a whole different set of techniques and tools that you use to get information. And so we'll be talking about those and learning the different techniques that are used, as well as understanding how and when to work with law enforcement, because you have to be at least 85% accuracy before you approach law enforcement. And usually then they will want to test you in some way. And so also in that class, we do mock testing that might be used by law enforcement to test your skills.
Wow. So I remember one of the things we did in one of the psychic investigation classes that you taught was you gave us a map and you wanted us to locate the body of the victim.
Mm-hmm.
And using the pendulum, we had to divide the map, yes or no, using the pendulum. And then through process of elimination, it was like, where was the body? And it worked. I mean, I was amazed how accurate when you're truly, making sure your mind isn't all cluttered with everything else and you're just focusing on that and truly just listening and letting things flow the way they're supposed to, right? Without any type of influence, how accurate it was. And Lynn has a lot of real cases that she uses for her classes, so that we know the information is factual, and it's just by the time you're done with the class, you walk away having such an appreciation for what our minds can do, right? Because we just don't even realize you go through your day every day and you're so busy with all the different um, things that are bombarding us, right? Whether it's social
Right.
media or the people in our family or work or, the radio, the TV, whatever. And it's like with this psychic investigation and using your gifts, you really have to refine your gifts and your intuitive skills. And I love how during your psychic skills certification program for the Edgar Cayce Center of New York City, you really dig deep into each clair and into each gift and how we can use that. So why don't you talk a little bit about your year-long certification program?
Well, it's a fun program. It is a year long. Where program you get to meet a lot of people. Now that it's online, you can meet people from all over the country, like-minded people, and create lifelong friendships. But each month we meet from 10 to 3 on Saturday and 10 to 3 on Sunday. And each month we cover a different topic of psychic work or psychic skills. And we start in the beginning with energy and vibration, and then each month we build on that with a new aspect of psychic work. So it's a year-long program with a vacation in July and one in December for holidays. At the end of the program, if you're interested, you can become certified, tested and certified through the Edgar Cayce Center of New York after some testing.
which I did because the
Right.
program was such a great precursor. Whether you have a lot of knowledge, whether you know that you're intuitive because of working with it or not, it's a great course for anyone that wants to really delve into the different facets of our intuitive nature. And I remember one exercise we did. You actually mailed us out bricks. Are you still doing that same type of exercise? Because I won't spoil it for anybody
Yes,
that's in the
I'm still doing
class.
the same type of exercise.
Okay.
But
Oh,
I can explain it this way. I will mail students out some type of a piece of a location. Now, it
mhm.
could be part of a building or rocks from a certain site. And it's object psychometry where they're holding on to an object and they're focusing in and receiving information through the object that they're holding. Because everything holds energy, whether it's a person, an object, or a location. And so a great part of the psychic investigation work is to focus into that energy, either of a crime scene or a victim or a perpetrator or a weapon or something that was used in the crime, and receive information from that. So by getting these different objects from different locations around the area, I can send them out to students and they can practice their psychometry that way. And it's a lot of fun. People really enjoy that part of the program.
It was incredible. And I mean, I was amazed. And I've been doing this work for years. But the
Right,
fact that I was holding a piece of a building in my hand that you had put in the mail from Massachusetts that had been hanging out for however long where it was, right?
right,
So this thing has been all over the place. And I'm holding this piece of whatever in my hand, and I could hear things and feel things and know things. And it was incredible. And it's like every weekend, every month, the monthly weekend, let's put it that way. Lynn makes it informative and fun, and she does an excellent job of explaining everything that's going on in a very scientific way. That was one of the things that I truly appreciated of your teaching, Lynn, was that being in the spiritual world as we are, sometimes we get this woo-woo label, that we're just a little out there and there's no science to back up what we're actually doing or feeling or knowing. And I loved that right from the beginning. It's like you talk about the science of it and how your brain works and how, and I know that since I've been teaching mediumship development, I always start with that too now, because it's like if they can understand how they're receiving the information, right? It just
right.
helps them to refine it and to get better at it. And I have to say that the scientific approach that you have to it is just it's very refreshing and it's very thorough, so I really enjoyed that.
And
Um,
it also gives people more confidence about their ability to do the work. All of this is built into our biology. It's not special gifts that some
right.
people have and some people don't. So if you understand, that it is part of your makeup as a human being, then it's a little easier to learn it and to practice it and to have confidence in the information that you give.
Yeah. And then some of the things, after the weekend would be over, I'd be like, honey, come stand over here in front of the white wall. I want to see your aura. You know, it was like asking my family members to help me with some of the exercises, you know. It's just a real treat. And what else? I know I wanted to ask you something else. So, Lynn, your your studies abroad, okay? So you've studied here in the US, but you've also studied in the UK. Um,
Right.
for our listeners, you know, can you tell us the nuances between the UK approach to psychic and spiritual um, information? Is there any difference between UK and the Americans?
Well, they're very serious about it and very thorough about it and very interested in making sure that their information is evidential and not just general, information that can uh, match up with pretty much anybody. And so I think, that's their focus really is to provide evidential information in terms of mediumship.
Mm-hmm.
But they are very serious. I attended the Arthur Findlay College and for a couple of, different weekends and different classes. And, it's amazing because you meet people from all over the world who are in those classes. And they're structured very well. And, usually the tutors are quite knowledgeable. And it's a lovely experience to go through. But I'd say the biggest difference is, they take themselves very seriously.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like the evidence, right? That it's like evidence, 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 and then the
Evidence, right?
message comes after. If you get to the
Right,
message, right?
right.
And but the what I know too is with Lilydale, we are about evidence as well, you know, and when we do our outdoor service and everything, we're trying to, you know, bring in evidence. And I feel sometimes you know, the evidence is there, and then the message may not make sense, you know, because of the evidence that's brought through. And also sometimes the evidence doesn't match, you know, the person. And so it's interesting how you know, when I trained with one UK instructor, it was like, you know, go back, get more evidence, get more evidence. And I think it makes you a better medium because
Mhm.
you're working with the spirit, you know, you're talking, it's an
Right,
actual conversation with the spirit, you know, and people then know that you're actually connecting and that you have their loved one there with them.
right.
And there's a whole weekend that you do mediumship in this psychic
In the
skills.
year-long course, right.
Yes,
We do
yes,
focus on evidential mediumship. And in terms of the evidence not matching, sometimes, spirit doesn't give false information. So usually what happens is we misinterpret it or misunderstand it in some way. So that's when you have to go back and check in and say, okay, what did I get wrong? Let's tell me, what you have to say again and get
yeah,
it right the second
just
time.
and it's like as far as we're taught to, you know, you're kind of like a parrot, you know, repeat it, give what you get, don't
Right.
embellish it,
Don't
don't
embellish and don't add to it.
exactly. And one of the things that we were talking about a little bit before we started the show was when we're doing the different exercises, you tell us as students to describe what you're seeing, describe what
Right.
you're
Right.
feeling or
Right.
smelling or hearing or whatever. Don't name it, right? Because it's it I think you said spirit gives you something. Explain that for our listeners.
Well, that is whether it's remote viewing or psychic work or whatever, um, your subconscious mind will always give you something that has something in common with what you're looking for. So, say for example, if I'm doing a mediumship reading and I see my Uncle Joe. Um, it's not for me, my Uncle Joe coming in, but I'm seeing Uncle Joe for a reason. Either the communicator's name is Joe or he looks like my Uncle Joe, or he did some type of work like my Uncle Joe. He has something in common with my Uncle Joe. So it's my job as a medium to find out what that is. And a lot of people confuse it and they say, oh, my uncle's here. This must be for me. But really, there's always some comparison between the two, something you know, in common between Uncle Joe and the communicator, that you are supposed to be getting the message in that way.
It's so true. The other thing I wanted to touch base on is, there's this there's this saying that all mediums are psychic, but all psychics are not mediums, right? We've heard that.
Right,
And one thing I want to say, you and I both know that it's just a difference of level of vibration. It's like where
right,
we're working. When
right,
we're working in the psychic, we're working with the sitter, and we're in their energy. Okay.
right,
And when we're working with the spirit people, we're in the spirit world vibration. But I must say, there is so much information that you can glean from psychically, that you can have a wonderful reading for someone, doing psychic only. And I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of raised eyebrows at me because I am an evidential medium and I'm on my Lilydale radio show here for mediums. However, it's like what I'm saying is that there is nothing if one decides not to raise their vibration into the spirit world and they want to focus primarily on psychic, there's a
right.
whole gamut of different things that you can talk about. And like talk about, you taught us about how the different, depending on how close you are, into a person's aura, all the different levels of information that is in each level, right? Close to the aura. It's
Right,
just
right,
so there's a lot there to learn.
right.
And so how do you feel about that whole statement?
Well, one of my mentors, Janet Nohavik, used to say all the time that somebody coming for a reading, it's a perfect cocktail that you mix between psychic and mediumship information. And, usually by the energy of your client when they come into the room, because that's the first thing we do is connect energetically, you can kind of figure out what they're there for. And you can mix that cocktail with just the right amounts of each to make your client happy and answer their questions or their needs.
Yeah, because some people, they'll be like, well, I want to hear from my Aunt Sophie that passed away, or I have a question. Like, I have one
Right.
client, where did he bury the money? you know So,
That's a common one. Where did they leave the will? Where did they?
yes,
Yeah,
yes. And it's like I almost want to say, well, my teacher Lynn would say, let's draw a map of the house. Okay. And I want you to get a pendulum out, and I'm going to tell you how to ask questions so that you can figure out where they buried the money on your own.
yeah. And you can also do it by just focusing in and doing it that way. I mean, the pendulum is another divination tool
Yeah.
that people use. I'm not a big pendulum user, but people like to learn about it. So that's why I teach it in the course a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you can also just focus in and ask where, show me the location that
Or use the
whatever it's
meter, right? You teach us how to use the meter, yes or no?
right.
There's
You
just
can use a
so
lot
many.
of different types of tools to create your own tools, really, to use whatever works for you. Different things work for different people. That's why I teach a lot of different things, a lot of different tools and techniques. And over the course of the 12-month program, you create your own toolbox of what tools and techniques work best for you. So at the end of the program, you have a set. There are a lot of different types of things. There are one-on-one readings. So there are certain types of techniques and tools that you use for that. Then there are psychic fairs, and there may be other kinds of tools that are, interesting and separate you from other readers that you might want to use at psychic fairs. Then there's what I call psychic Tupperware, where someone has a party of 10 people and they call you over and say, "Oh, I want you to give everyone a reading." So maybe there are different types of techniques that you would use in that situation. And so there's a tool for every situation. At the end of the 12 months, you have a big toolbox with lots of different tools and techniques that you can use.
I particularly liked the feathers. So it's just
Yeah,
so
don't
much
give it
fun.
all away.
It's like yeah, so it, I just want to encourage anyone that's listening that and you don't have to be in an advanced level to take these classes. You know, it's you're learning as you go. And it's almost like a discovery because you don't know what you don't know. And you know, you may not have tried any of these things before. And it's like you're going to a smorgasbord. There's an old word, right? A
Right.
smorgasbord of psychic tools. And it's like I didn't, we're going to read buttons. I didn't know you could do that. You know, it's just so much fun. So I'm just a big proponent of that course, Lynn, and I encourage anybody to check it out. So, is there anything else you would like to bring up today in regards to, you know, what you do and what you offer and you know, anything like that?
You put me on the spot here. Well, all I can say really is that any of these classes, whether it's remote viewing or the divination with all the juicy tools, or a psychic investigation, which is a little more on the serious side, they're all ways that you can open up your abilities in different way. So whether it's a year-long program where you get a little taster every month of a different aspect of psychic work, or a shorter program like the ones I'll be doing at Lilydale. They're all fun. You meet people of all different levels in the classes, and you can always learn from each other. I know that I started at Lilydale and I've made so many good friends like yourself. I think we were in our first class together there at Lilydale
Think so too.
years ago. Right. And it's a great way to make new friends, meet like-minded people, learn new skills, practice the skills. You get plenty of practice in all of these different workshops and classes. And so I invite everyone to come and take part in it because it's just a beautiful community where people can share and learn.
And feel safe to do so,
Right.
right?
And
It's
feel
it's
supported.
yes, it's
And
like
that's one thing about the 12-month course, or even any of these shorter courses that I'm doing, is that you're in a group of people who support you and want you to do well. So you have a safe space to practice these things. It's not competitive, it's not
mhm.
cutthroat. It is just a great group of people who are interested in learning and want you to come on the journey along with them.
It's a wonderful adventure. And and if anything, you might leave after taking these classes in Lilydale or the year-long program with a like, oh, so that was is what that was, right? Like
Right,
aha moments, you know, of things that have already happened in your life that you didn't understand what it was, and maybe
right,
you didn't want to talk about it because you know people would think that there was something wrong with you, and then after going through this class or some of these classes, you realize that you're perfectly normal and this is all part of who we are. So,
right. And I
yeah.
think you will surprise yourself that at what you can do. I know that was my experience at Lilydale when I started taking these classes. I was like, oh my goodness, I could do that. And I think, that's an exciting part for people in any of the classes that you take.
So, Lynn, if people want to learn more about you, what is your, do you have a website?
I do not at the moment have a
Okay.
website, but if you would like to put my email in the chat, or whatever, uh,
Now, I wasn't
people.
prepared to do that.
Oh,
So,
okay.
but yeah,
Yeah, so you can reach me.
Why don't you tell us what your
The
role
Edgar
is?
Cayce Center of New York website, ARE of New York. And my information and contact information is there.
Yes. Well,
Along with a great description of my year-long course. This is my 10th anniversary, by the way, at the Edgar Cayce Center teaching this course. So we've got a big celebratory season going on with a reduced price and a greater opportunity for more people to join.
that's wonderful. And it is a ride, isn't it? It's a wild ride because you
It
never know
is.
what's going to happen and what you can do. So, just quickly for our listeners, the program is just about done, and hopefully, shortly, we will have some things on the website so that you can actually sign up for the classes. And as soon as we have that on our website, I'll be sending the link out to you so that you can also get it out to your mailing list and all. So people can just, come to our website and sign up for your beautiful classes this summer at Lilydale. And I just want to thank you for taking time out in your busy schedule to come on my show here and introduce yourself and hopefully encourage people to dip their toe in and learn more about their natural gifts.
Yes, I invite everyone to come, and I thank you for having me on the show. And if anyone does want to reach me, you can do it at Lin, Lin, at lindakhunter.net. That's a letter K. Lin at lindakhunter.net.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great couple of weeks, and we'll see you soon.